Okay, I can live in this moment. Ooh, do we have a dead mic? A dead mic, and we'll swap it out. Dead mic! Dead mic! Let's do it. Oh, wired, nice and hot. Oh, God. I leave nothing but destruction wherever I go. We are off to a great start tonight, folks. Welcome to Tales from the Multiverse of Radness. I was determined to drag this convention kicking and screaming into the 1980s. So here we are. And yeah, so the premise of this show, what is this show? This show is, the theme of the convention was multiverse. And I wanted to reach out to some of my favorite storytellers and make them write on that theme. There is no deeper thought behind this, folks. That is exactly what you were in store for tonight. So our first performer is someone who, in fact, he is one of the founders of CONvergence. He is one of the founders of Vilification Tennis. He is one of the founders of Fearless Comedy. He's one of those guys who exists to make you feel unsatisfied with your own achievements. In fact, he will be opening for the very reason that he has to race off to another show and sound check for another show. So please welcome to the stage your opening performer, Mr. Tim Wick.
Thank you. I do have to encourage all of you that the Dregs are performing in Harmonic Convergence at 11 o'clock. That's right after this show, so you can check that out if you want. Or if you don't have to go. It's all right. You can do whatever you want. This convention's free. I mean, it's not free. Let's just do the story, shall we? All right. It was 4:22 in the afternoon. Jolene typed rapidly at her keyboard, trying to get her thoughts written out because she knew there were only a few minutes until she would run out of time. The chapter was almost finished and she didn't want to lose what she had been so carefully crafting in her head. It was a horror novel and her character had just arrived in their new home. Everything seemed normal, but they couldn't shake an uneasy feeling that the house was more than it seemed. Why had it been so inexpensive? Why were the neighbors refusing to make eye contact? Why was the sidewalk to the front door built entirely out of gravestones? They moved to turn on the light, and out of the corner of their eye, they thought they saw behind her a bright light shone through the wall, and a strong wind blew through the room. It was strong enough to disturb any loose items lying about, but fortunately, there were none. Everything had been tucked away into drawers or cabinets and securely locked in place. She had always been a planner and was definitely ready. A young woman stepped out of the portal in the wall. She looked exactly like Jolene, except for her skin, which was scaled like a snake, her eyes, which were yellow, and her hair, which was not there at all. Jolene, the young woman said, I know this won't make any sense, but I'm you from another reality. Yes, Jolene sighed, I know. Jolene Prime, that's what Jolene called the new Jolene, was surprised. You do? Yes, I know who you are. I understand that we have to repair a rift in the fabric of space-time, so let me ask you the important question. Do they have something called a turkey baster in your reality? Jolene Prime was having a hard time saying anything. Going through a space-time portal takes a lot longer than they show in the movies, so she'd had quite a bit of time to rehearse her speech she'd be using to convince Jolene this wasn't a dream or a hallucination. Now, she'd been knocked off script. Okay, Jolene asked, I'm sorry to have been abrupt, but I'm in the middle of a chapter and I'd like to get back to it. How about we start simple? What's your name? Is it Jolene or something else? In my head, you're Jolene Prime, but that feels rude to call you that. I'm Jolene. Right. I can't pronounce that. Can I call you Joe? That's what my friends call me. That's weird, right? Isn't that weird? No. Not when we are alternate reality versions of each other. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it. So, So what were you saying? I need to know if they have turkey basters in your reality. Most realities have a turkey baster, Jolene had learned. They aren't always called turkey basters, just like all Jolenes are not called Jolene. But a turkey baster is the single most useful tool in the multiverse, and if this Jolene, Jo, knew what a turkey baster was, it would go a very long way to solving the same problem she had been solving for the last 3 years, 7 months, and 8 days. Once a day at 4:24 in the afternoon. I know what a baster is, Jo answered helpfully, but I've never heard of a turkey. Good. We're getting somewhere. It's important you know how to use one. Jolene pulled open one of the drawers of her desk. It was filled with turkey basters, all brand new in the package. She held one up for Jo to see. So, you know what this is? Well, Jo replied, it's quite a bit smaller than the ones I'm familiar with, but no worries at all, Jolene assured her. As long as you know what it is and how to operate it, we're going to be in good shape. Know how to operate it, Jo laughed. Why, it's the single most useful tool in the multiverse. Then why, when you were trying to save the multiverse, didn't you think to bring one with you? Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Jolene sighed. She wasn't so much angry at Jo as she was at herself. How could she so consistently forget a turkey baster when setting off on a multi-dimensional quest to save the multiverse? She didn't think she personally would forget a turkey baster, but so much of her alternate reality selves had forgotten it that she had to accept it was a personal failure. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't be so harsh. I'm not really angry at you. I'm angry at me, which is also kind of angry at you, but never mind. How is it I keep forgetting a turkey baster? How many alternative versions of yourself have you encountered without a turkey baster? 74. Some of them make sense because their multiverse hasn't developed turkey baster technology. How is it possible to develop multidimensional travel without a turkey baster? There's never enough time to ask. Oh, good point. I forgot to mention that we're in a terrible hurry, and you already knew that, didn't you? I did. I'm just getting some copper wire to wrap around the tip. Jolene opened another drawer filled with spools of copper wire and a wire cutter. She wrapped wire around the tip of the new turkey baster exactly 14 and a half times. Then she cut the wire. As she was completing the process, Jo just rockward awkwardly on her bare feet, her claws tapping restlessly on the hardwood floor, even as she tried to make herself stop. So, Jo began. How's the book coming along? Not bad. I'm on chapter 4. What kind of book are you writing? Oh, it's a sort of gothic horror ghost story. Well, that sounds cool. What's a ghost? Not really enough time to explain. Here you go. The baster was wrapped with wire and had a small battery pack that had been affixed with some duct tape along with a simple push-button switch. Oh, Jo explained. I see. You just take the yes, and then you ram it in the and then it makes exactly. Okay, well, that's great. I guess I better go. I only have 5 minutes to get back in time to, ram the... Yeah, I understand. It was nice to meet you. It was nice to meet you, too. Maybe someday we'll have the chance to. Probably not. No, I guess not. Well, good luck with your book. Good luck with yours. Jo stepped back through the portal. As it closed, it sucked all the air out of the room for a moment, and Jolene swore as she lost another roll of duct tape she'd forgotten to put back in the drawer. She was going to need to buy some before tomorrow. Once the portal was gone, she looked down at the writing on her screen. They moved to turn on the light, and out of a corner of her eye, they saw... Shit! Thank you.
All right, let's keep that going for Mr. Tim Wick. On your way out the door, if people want to see more of your work, where can they do it?
Why, they can go watch the Dregs at 11 o'clock on Harmonic Convergence Day.
There you go. All right. And moving right along, oh, this is the nice thing about a great lineup. I have so little to do as host. I just want to bring our next performer onto the stage for you. A Mr. Patrick Harrigan, local blowhard, occasionally edits academic books about new media and games. For example, first person, second person, third person, zones of control. Co-hosts a podcast about the TV show Doctor Who at GetOffMyWorldPodcast.com and inflicts spoken word pieces on Twin Cities audiences collected in the books The Lecture Tour and On Tour Forever. Despite all this, he is usually pleasant to be around, and you should buy him a drink sometime. Please welcome to the stage, Pat Harrigan.
Thank you. Before we begin the panel, I would like to make a few preliminary remarks. First and most importantly, thank you to JJ, Phillip, Akiva, JH, Allison, Jeff, and Marlo for inviting me to appear as an invited participant at this year's Fringe Convention. I am highly conscious of this signal honor. Next, for the benefit of any audience members who may not be intimately familiar with the final season of the show, I am not impugning your love of Fringe, my friends. I know that you care for it as much as I do, both as it exists and as it could have existed if the network had allowed it further seasons. But the fact remains that Season 6 was by far the least watched, and so a brief refresher may be in order. Fox TV's program Fringe was never a smash hit, but the show's pilot, aired on September 9th, 2008, racked up a very respectable 9.13 million viewers, and the second episode an impressive 13.27 million. However, it only cracked 10 million 4 more times during Season 1, and it slid dramatically from there. Its 2-part Season 5 closer had only 3.28 million viewers. Of course, it didn't help that Fox moved the show from its original Tuesday night slot to Thursday night for its second season, then into the dreaded Friday night death slot for seasons 3 to 5, and finally into the 1 a.m. Monday morning slot for its final season, where its viewership cratered, never cracking 1 million viewers for any of the 13 final episodes, and garnering only 125,000 viewers for its January 20th, 2014 season finale, of which I am not ashamed to say that I was one, and I hope that many of you here this morning are as well. Yes? Now, perhaps there is something freeing for the producers of a television show when they know they have nothing to lose, or rather, that they have already lost. For years, Fringe had already been innovative in its radical shifts of direction, beginning as it had as a science fiction procedural with a Monster of the Week structure, before gradually revealing a larger, more elaborate serialized plot, and in Season 3, alternating between episodes set in the familiar established setting and episodes set in a parallel universe setting, in which the same actors played alternate versions of their characters, which built up to a potentially universe-destroying war between those two realities, before switching gears once again in the 5th season, in which our characters are awakened from hibernation into the year 2036 to discover that the Earth has been invaded by bald time travelers from the future. And of course, over this period, the showrunners experimented with many unusual televisual storytelling techniques, including flash forwards, a musical film noir homage, and several animated sequences, including one in the style of Monty Python's Terry Gilliam. The last episode of Season 4 had been conceived of as a potential series finale if the show were not renewed, which partly explains the radical shift in direction in Season 5. And this seems to have happened again a year later, because Season 6 takes its viewers in other unexpected directions. Where can we go? You can almost hear the production staff asking themselves, now that we have thoroughly reset the timeline and given all our characters definitive endings. Well, for a show about parallel universes, the next logical step was to expand on that idea, and so Season 6 finds our Fringe team Anna Torv as Olivia, John Noble as Walter, and Joshua Jackson as Peter, traveling throughout the multiverse in search of the hallucinogenic white tulip that will allow them to stop the rogue observer named Julian from undoing the Big Bang. The stakes couldn't be higher: to undo everything and replace it with what? Their first Season 6 adventure, a two-parter, saw the team scouring the timeline for their former adversary, Dr. David Robert Jones, played by Emmy Award winner Jared Harris. Alistair Peck's time travel device allows them to travel to the American Civil War, and then Victorian England and New York City in the 1960s, before they track Dr. Jones down in ancient Pompeii, where he is apparently killed during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Next up is a trip to find their former boss, Phillip Broyles, played by Blanche Reddick, during which they investigate various law enforcement offices in Los Angeles, New York City, and Baltimore, by which point most viewers will probably have begun to catch on to this season's conceit. And indeed, when the Fringe team goes in search of Alistair Peck, played by Peter Weller, now a hideous combination of man and machine on the mean streets of Detroit, and Leonard Nimoy's Dr. William Bell on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, we understand that the team is traversing their way through a wide variety of films and television shows in which Fringe actors have appeared, and interacting with the characters that those actors have played, and that we are witnessing the most ambitious pan-universal crossover in the history of television. Oh my goodness! It must be admitted that the episode centered on Anna Torv's Olivia is kind of a dud, since the actress didn't have a very robust filmography to draw upon. The team discovers her doppelganger in World War II era actress Virginia Gray, whom Torv portrayed in the miniseries The Pacific. But Joshua Jackson's return to Dawson's Creek, during which he participates in a coke-fueled orgy with former co-star James Van Der Beek, was unexpectedly touching. But I think we all agree that John Noble did the most impressive work this season, reprising his roles from Stargate SG-1, 24, Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries, and The Lord of the Rings. Fun fact, at this time, John Noble also had a recurring role in the Fox TV show Sleepy Hollow, and for this episode, he was able to walk across the Fox studio lot from one stage to the other to appear in Fringe without needing to change out of his Sleepy Hollow costume. And surely it was his work here that caught the attention of the showrunners of the CW network show Legends of Tomorrow, and led them to cast him in Season 3 as the voice of the demon Malice, and also as himself, John Noble, whom the Legends of Tomorrow team in the April 2nd, 2018 episode entitled Guest Starring John Noble must travel back in time to visit on the set of The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, in order to obtain a recording of his voice so that they can defeat the demon Malice, which, remember, John Noble actually voices in the show, and this in an episode which also features Gorilla Grodd attempting to kill a college student who turns out to be future U.S. President Barack Obama. But maybe I'm starting to lose context here a little and should try to reground us a bit. You understand. Anyway, for the benefit of those of you who have not had the pleasure yet of viewing this experimental season, I will say no more for fear of spoilers, except that there are few further expeditions into alternate realities, like an episode titled after Alan Moore's Idea Space, which takes place inside the books Olivia read for her college 19th century English literature class, an episode set entirely within Peter's sperm, one from the point of view of Astrid Farnsworth's sculpture of Galatea, and my favorite, a visit to the entropic anti-utopia of Michael Moorcock's End of Time novels, produced entirely in a retro Ray Harryhausen stop-motion animation style, impressive on a TV budget, featuring Marina Sirtis as the Iron Orchid, Jensen Ackles as Lord Jacob, Chase Masterson as My Lady Charlotina, and a special guest appearance by Jeffrey Combs as Gaff the Horse in Tears. I am conscious of the fact that at this point half my audience thinks I am speaking absolute gibberish. But I can only assure you that it makes a lot more sense when you watch it, particularly at 1 a.m. on Monday mornings, having spent several insomniac weeks in the grip of an existential panic triggered by entering one's 40s and the blossoming awareness of the paths not taken in life, the opportunities unpursued and ambitions unfulfilled, the relationships shattered and buried like potsherds, the Cobra-like careers, the unbacktrackable paths, the unbirthed and unrecovered things, the non-choices, the incompatible universes that demand an answer right now, like the voices when they called out to the observer Julian before his final sacrifice, the uninspired lump of clay, the tedious self-constructions and the tantalizing heart of darkness fringes of your own laboriously sketched-in spiritual map within the easy outlines in which the last of all contradictions resolve and are named, the gaff, the grot, the gray, the bell, the bang, and all timelines collapse, fuse, fix into unpainful alignment for the benefit of your unclosing eye. This is it, the definitive end this time. No more retcons, no more do-overs. I hope you're happy where you've traveled to, observing it from the couch in the Monday morning death slot, in the bluish light from the TV, in a darkened room when the person you love is asleep behind the door. Season 6 is available on Blu-ray and DVD amongst online retailers. I thank you for your kind attention, friends, and please give a warm welcome to our panelists. Good morning.
Let's make some noise for Pat Harrigan. I'm a hypothetical audience member who has fallen in love with you specifically. Where can I find out more about you?
My books are primarily available from Amazon.com. I apologize for that. I know. But this particular piece is in my collection called On Tour Forever.
On Tour Forever. All right. Our next performer, Mr. Jeff Henry, is a science fiction writer and satirist, currently sponsored by interdimensional marketing firm the Infinity Corporation, FMSC. You can see his show Infinity Hour at the Minnesota Fringe Festival, or read his debut novel Dream Sequences, now available on his website. He awaits the day our increasingly dystopian reality surpasses his corporate satire and he can retire into peaceful irrelevance. We all long for that day. Welcome to the stage, Jeff Henry.
Picture this common scenario. There you are, standing next to a railway. The sun glints off the bright, cold steel tracks in front of you. You hear muffled cries. Your eyes shoot to the source. Tied to the middle of the tracks, a family of 5, a mother, a father, and 3 children, struggle uselessly against their bonds. Sweat trickles down your neck. How did I get here, you wonder feverishly. One of the children, perhaps the oldest, certainly the tallest, catches sight of you, her eyes locking with yours in a silent plea for help. A rumbling sound begins shaking the ground. Something is coming. Looking frantically back and forth, you see that to your right, a track branches off to the northwest, and next to it, a lever that will shift any oncoming car from the path it's on to this alternate track. You nearly breathe a sigh of relief. The air has entered your lungs, and it's about to leave your mouth in a long, satisfied exhalation when you notice him and it catches in your throat. Wrapped tightly in thick rope like a muscular burrito is a bespectacled and bearded young man with an old sock stuffed in his mouth, tied to the northwest track. Your mind is racing. The rumbling grows louder and louder, and suddenly it bursts forth onto the horizon. The trolley car, colossal, seeming to consume the whole horizon, red like blood in flame, its wheels chugging and chewing inexorably towards their gruesome, inevitable end as you eye the lever. Do you pull it? Shift the track, commit murder against that poor young man on the northwest track? Or do you close your eyes, not involve yourself in this unfortunate situation that you had no pardon. Offer up your thoughts and prayers to the family as their blood and bones burst forth like a grisly geyser, spraying towards the heavens that their souls will never quite reach. What if the young man is the next Einstein? What if one of those children is the next Hitler or Stalin or Ronald Reagan? What if the young man's future daughter will discover a cure for cancer? You're being asked to play dice with the universe, to blindly choose between countless possible futures and bloody your hands in the process. But what if your choice didn't have to be blind? What if you could look at all possible outcomes? What if you could have true knowledge of the future at your fingertips? Well, with the Infinity Corporation's brand new Fate Flux 5000 Destiny Determination chip, you can. Simply insert the chip into your Infinity Corporation-owned digital consciousness interface, agree to the terms of service, and you're on your way to the best of all possible worlds. Using top-of-the-line quantum computing technology, the Fate Flux 5000 automatically analyzes every situation you find yourself in and provides helpful factoids about the future that will result from each potential action you might take. Let's return to our example scenario. As the trolley thunders murderously towards the family tied to the tracks, panic rising in your chest as the time for you to decide whether to throw the lever slips away, you suddenly remember you just installed your brand new Fate Flux 5000 chip. Powering on the system, you see the user-friendly decision tree interface pops up, and you scroll through each possible outcome of the situation. The bearded man on the right-hand track, it turns out, is extremely average. He's no Paul Pot, but he's not going to cure cancer. Just a guy. Same for the kids on the left track. Between them, they'll grow up to have a total of 5 kids who will also be very average. But suddenly, a red blinking exclamation point pops up over their father. Beep, beep. That's a Fate Flux action alarm, giving you urgent information that the system believes will be crucial to your decision. Selecting it, you see that a year and a half from now, the father will suffer a heart attack behind the wheel of the bus he drives for a living. A head-on collision will result, killing nearly everyone on board. One of the passengers who will die in the crash would otherwise give birth to a child who will grow up to be an activist and will lead a movement that will ultimately prevent a third world war. Suddenly, a crushing moral dilemma becomes very simple and straightforward. With a confident smile, you step back from the lever and watch calmly as the trolley thunders forth towards the 5 people struggling against their bonds, and you step back just in time to avoid the spray of blood and body pieces that comes raining down. The bearded man alone on the other track looks at you with a little bit of relief and a lot of horror, obviously wondering why you chose to spare him over the family with 3 children. If only he bought a Fate Flux 5000, his survivor's guilt might have been assuaged. With the Fate Flux 5000, choosing the best timeline for your needs is a breeze. Eat toast for breakfast and get in a car crash, or have cereal instead and meet your future wife. Turn left on Main Street and get hit by a bus, or turn right and get to work early enough for those free donuts that Susan brings in. The Fate Flux 5000 puts your future in your hands. Order yours today. The attorney pauses the recording, the smartly dressed holographic Infinity Corporation rep from the infomercial flickering slightly. Mr. Tavener, your hollow player records indicate that you watched this advertisement only a day before your purchase of the Fate Flux 5000 device. You were then fully aware of the system's capabilities, were you not? I wince. I want more than anything to deny it, but the neural scanners will immediately indicate a new deception. I knew exactly what the device did. There's no use claiming otherwise. The prosecutor looks at me with a raised eyebrow. I nod. Yes. So then, Mr. Tavener, you purchased your Fate Flux device, and the next day you declined to attend a party hosted by your friend Felix Buckman. In the last 2 years, you never have missed one of Mr. Buckman's parties, but that night, you did. He whirls around and holds up the Fate Flux 5000 chip the police extracted from my own interface. According to our analysis, Mr. Tavener, a Destiny Determination scan, registered trademark of the Infinity Corporation FMSC, was run that day at 2:35 p.m. True or false? The scan showed that at the party you would meet a woman with whom you would have unplanned intimate relations and who would go on to have your child, a boy named Robert. I swallow hard. The prosecutor, the judge, my lawyer, the observers, all eyes are on me. Cold sweat drips down my neck. True, I admit. You didn't want children. I sigh. Correct. The prosecutor turns towards the jury. So, Mr. Tavener chose not to go to the party with full knowledge that by doing so, he was preventing a person, little Robert, from being born, from knowing the joy of life and the love of his mother. He pauses dramatically. Pursuant to H.R. 230 and based on his own testimony, we ask that you find Mr. Tavener guilty of homicide by birth prevention in the first degree. A few moments of silence as the jury members' digital consciousness interfaces run augmented probability calculations. Then in unison, their heads all turn towards my attorney and I. We have reached a verdict, they state at once. The defendant is guilty. The sentence is... Here they pause once again. Their own fate flux 5,000 chips, doubtlessly looking at the resulting timelines from each punishment they could beat out to me. Will I go on to cause enough positive change in the world that they'll release me early? Will I... The voices of the jury members cut off my optimistic reverie. Death, they say. The end.
Keep it going for Jeff Henry. Oh, can you feel the spirit soaring? So, to whatever degree that your overlords at the Infinity Corporation will allow you to answer, where can people find more of your work?
At theinfinitycorporation.com. I have a podcast up called Infinity Hour, which is written by me and performed with a few friends, and also my book.
Awesome. All right, next performer, Mr. Michael Merriam is an award-winning author, performer, poet, and playwright. Like most artists, he has worked a variety of odd jobs over the years, including short order cook, late-night radio disc jockey, international shipping specialist, and manager of a puppet troupe. I'm just up-talking the end of all these because they're amazing. He is the author of the steampunk series Six Guns and Sorcery. God, you've had the coolest life. And his stories and poems have appeared in over 100 magazines and journals. His scripts have been produced for stage and radio, and he has appeared in the Minnesota Fringe Festival, Not So Silent Planet, Storyfest Minnesota, and over the air on KFAI and Minnesota Public Radio. Please welcome Michael Merriam.
I don't know who wrote that for me, but I didn't pay him enough. They make me sound way cooler than I actually am. That's my book. It's also about college. Sort of kind of. I see you found an antique streetcar token laying on the sidewalk in front of your favorite coffee shop. Congratulations, or perhaps condolences. Your token is good for one ride. Remember this. When the phantom streetcar rolls to a stop in front of you and opens its doors wide and welcome, climb aboard. Give the token to the conductor. Do not worry that you cannot remember his face. Check your pockets to make sure you have a dime so you can buy a return token. You will find you have one, perhaps several, even though you never carry change as a rule. You should go ahead and buy a token or 2 or 5 from the friendly, faceless conductor, just to be prepared. Walk down the aisle and take a seat. The other riders may seem a bit strange to you, a bit fanciful. Yes, there is a man in a business suit with the head of a bison, and there is a woman who smiles at you, and she has stars in her eyes, literal stars. As she regards you, you might feel a chill as if you have seen your own grave, but I promise her business is not with you this night. The elderly couple across the aisle from you seem blissfully mundane until you notice the foxtail peeking out from under the woman's dress. As you look around, you'll find each rider weirder and more fantastical than the next. Please try not to stare, especially at what appear to be your dead grandparents. And even more importantly, do not stare at your 15-year-old self, headphones on, oblivious to the world around you both. Just don't. The bell will ring and the big yellow car will lurch forward, gathering speed, carry you to the magical underside of the Twin Cities, or maybe an alternate Twin Cities. A Twin Cities that never was, could be, might have been, will be. Every Twin Cities that ever existed anywhere in any time. Try not to think about it too hard. When the car stops and the door opens, get off and explore, if you dare. Keep in mind that time moves differently here. Remember where your stop is. Don't lose your token home. Enjoy yourself. Maybe you could catch a streetcar baseball doubleheader. Minneapolis Millers and St. Paul Saints. Visit the historic ballparks. Lexington, Nicollet, Midway, athletic field. Maybe catch a few innings at a more modern park. No, not the one that's domed and looks like a fungus, but the one that floats above the mighty Mississippi River, tethered by the banks of heavy chains, a dozen escalators made of rainbows in starlight leading upward to the new facility. Buy a ticket to the game, get a hot dog and a beer, if that's your thing. Yes, that is you sitting there in a souvenir Twins jersey, next to the woman who looks like the girl you liked in 10th grade, but you were too shy to say anything to, now all grown up. Those might be your kids. Don't stare. Try not to think about it too hard. You can see all the great stars of baseball if you stay long enough, all of them. Yes, in any iteration of Twin Cities baseball, they all played here at some point. Harmon Killebrew, Shohei Ohtani, Greg Maddux, Joe Mauer, Crash Davis, Babe Ruth, Bob Gibson, Buck Bukai, all the greats. Souvenirs in hand, climb back aboard the streetcar, spend another of your precious tokens. Take a ride around the cities. Here you'll pass the Metropolitan Building, glorious and strong. Of course, it's long gone in your reality, but this is a special place. Cross the river, gaze upon the 200-story skyscraper dominating the skyline of St. Paul. If you decide to visit, exit the streetcar, I can tell you that it has a glorious nightclub on the 66th floor, and the deli on floor 143 makes a really mean Cubano. A sleek glider carrying a dozen passengers whirls by the streetcar on the parallel track. You probably shouldn't have waved at yourself, but, well, done is done. Perhaps you'd rather visit the Island Amusement Park in the middle of Lake Minnetonka. The yellow streetcar becomes a yellow boat, and now it will cost you 2 tokens for the conductor, or maybe the ferryman to cross. Buy cotton candy for that special someone from long ago. You know who he is, but do not think to dwell here with them. You will watch as a younger couple, a couple from your warmest sepia memories, strolls along the boardwalk in the gathering gloom. You want to follow them, to warn them, but it doesn't do to dwell on such things. You catch other entertainments, bands you remember, bands you never saw, the Jayhawks, the Replacements, Dylan. Yes, that is you playing bass for Semisonic, or at least a you that didn't put the music away for an office job. Try not to think about that too hard, or it will break your heart. Try not to think too hard about the music you didn't play, the acting you set aside, the novel you never wrote, the people you didn't meet and love. Because, well, you may not have. Rest assured, a different you in another universe did. Perhaps it's not too late for this you. If you still want that path, walk it. Just be brave. But the hour's getting late now. Remember, time is no longer linear here. Hike back to the dock. Let the ferryman in his yellow streetcar boat carry you back to the mainland. Do not worry that you cannot remember his face. Be warned, these things you will or may encounter on your journey to the streetcar stop and the car that will deliver you in front of the coffee shop and home. You may meet a lost traveler, offer them a token, but not your last one. You may meet a hungry traveler, feed them the last of your carnival and ballpark food. You may meet a traveler shivering in the cold. Offer them your jacket, or that souvenir Twins jerseys, or maybe the Prince t-shirt from a tour in 2025 that will never happen in your universe. You may meet a traveler who is injured, a traveler whose heart is broken, a traveler standing on the precipice and looking down into the abyss. Heal their hurts if you can. Offer them comfort if you cannot. Yes, they all wear your face. Try not to stare. All these travelers are a mirror of your existence, a shadow of your life that might have been, could have been, might yet be. Be kind to all you meet, for kindness costs you nothing. Climb aboard the streetcar when it arrives. Give your final token to the conductor. When he tips his cap, smile and nod your head in acknowledgement. Try not to stare too hard in what suddenly seems to be a mirror. Around you, the night settles in. One by one, the other riders climb off the back of the car. The woman with stars in her eyes at Lakeview Cemetery. The bison-headed man at the corner of Uptown's Hennepin and Lake. The old man and his fox wife get off at Emerson, and your grandparents at DuPont. You watch your younger self flee the streetcar and dive into Bryant Lake Bowl. Yearn with all your being to tell him it will be okay, to tell him to hold on to whatever dreams and desires he feels he has to abandon for the sake of conformity. But you must let him go. The car rolls on, and once familiar buildings take on a sinister mantle, rising and falling as if time itself was running out, entropy devouring all you know in your hometown. You must not allow yourself to fall down the rabbit hole of useless thoughts of self and mortality. The thump, thump, thump of the brakes breaks through your dark reverie. The conductor whistles clang, clang, clang when the trolley. Is this your stop? You think it is. You hope. That looks like the coffee shop you left. How long ago was it? A few hours? An evening? A lifetime? It shines out, brightly lit beacon against the velvet darkness, filled with customers chatting, reading, or bent over their electronic devices. The young woman at the steamer looks like the same one who makes the best caramel macchiato in town. Through the window, you can just read the sign that says, "No, the barista does not want to sleep with you." This is certainly your favorite coffee shop, right? The car stops. You realize that you are the last rider, and this is the end of the line. The conductor turns away from you, and the back door opens. Gather your belongings. Gather your courage. Step off the car. As the streetcar rolls away, where once it was darkness, now the bright sun breaks through the gloom and warms your face. You are home. And while your physical souvenirs may have vanished like fairy gold, no matter, you carry the journey inside you. Though now, faced with the too bright reality of your life, you wonder if it was all a dream. By the time you finish the walk to your home, you might well have convinced yourself it was all a dream, or maybe a hallucination. You probably shouldn't have eaten that second piece of cherry cheesecake. Reaching into your pocket for your keys, you feel it, small, metallic, the streetcar token you found on the sidewalk. A chuckle escapes your lips, dies as you reach into your pocket again, find another token, and another, until you hold 13 of them. They spill from your shaking hands to the ground at your feet as you back away in terrible understanding and no little fear. What? You thought that once you had seen the magical underside of reality, once you had seen through time and into the multiverse and all that is possible, that you would just get to return home to your little apartment, stream a few episodes of whatever show you're watching and climb into your bed, secure in this reality? You thought you'd just get to go back? You thought you'd get to unsee all you'd seen? Take a deep breath. Pick up your tokens. The next streetcar will be waiting, will come for you when the stars are right. You are a part of this now, one of us. Congratulations. Perhaps condolences.
Let's keep it going from Michael Merriam. Boy, you hit a remarkable number of my buttons with that story. Is that new? Is that collected anywhere? Awesome. So where can people find more of your work?
So Merriam.com will have my bibliography. You can go to my publisher's website, Queen of Swords Press. You can buy Last Card to Administration, which has been called by reviewers the most Minneapolis urban fantasy since War for the Oaks, and I can take that comparison and wear it proudly.
Hell yeah.
And then what will be in CryptoCon in a few weeks, decent book fest.
Cool. All right, folks, we have one more performer for you tonight to lead you into an indeterminate number of worlds. We should have made this a drinking game. That's what we should have done. Every time you find a new reality appears in the story, we'd all be dead. But for his anthology performance of science fiction and horror stories, Ben won the audience vote for Best Storytelling Show at the Victoria Fringe Festival, Canada 2017. His various play and comedy productions earned audience pick encore performances 4 times at the Minnesota Fringe Festival. He has also worked as a professional stand-up comic, MC, and moderator, and continues to dabble. Long ago, in this galaxy, Ben won the title of Acme Comedy Company's Funniest Person in the Twin Cities contest, and to this day leverages that title to nab sweet gigs like this. Welcome to the stage, Ben Sandell.
Thank you, everybody, for sticking around to the end of this show, even though by the sound of it, they are clearly having more fun in the other room. I mean, it's just wild times over there, and we're just here. But in alternate reality, you're laughing your ass off over that other room. But here we are. This is a story called Sober History. On this earth, the first pub crawl occurred in the late 1600s, probably. We don't know for sure. None of the participants thought to take notes, or perhaps they got too drunk and spilled their inkwell. Educated guess puts the origin in one of those famously dank countries, England, Scotland, or Ireland, and likely involved the type of ne'er-do-wells who would today be dubbed hooligans. Only in retrospect do we know to call them what they truly were: heroes. In a single pioneering pilgrimage from one pub to another, and then 10 more after that, a group of intrepid tosspots invented a time-honored tradition to outlast the horse and carriage. Yet their story would go untold, their names lost in the haze of time. On the night of the inaugural pub crawl, history itself blacked out. There is, however, an alternate Earth in a parallel dimension where the founder of this sacred ritual received proper credit and rightful respect. Edward Finnegy III, a master auditor who one day crunched the numbers and realized the world suffered from a dire lack of human error. What the world really needed, he theorized, was a bit of sloppiness. I always felt something was missing, Edward explained in his autobiography, Crawl or Nothing. Society, it lacked a kind of spontaneity. It lacked a lack of control. Edward had no idea how right he was. His world literally did lack something. Something most societies and most parallel universes indulged in daily. Something that bent the very arc of history to his will. Booze. The version of Earth inhabited by Edward harbored a quirk in his chemical makeup that made fermentation impossible. The only way humans could experience a buzz was if they forcefully blew on their thumbs for 30 seconds or spun in place until they collapsed. During the Middle Ages, kings and queens would host fancy twirling parties where guests rode on specially constructed merry-go-rounds, faster and faster, before hopping off to attempt a quick dance while sufficiently dizzy. In our world, rapidly spinning in place is a gateway drug to the more hardcore stuff. In Edward's world, getting dizzy was as hardcore as it got. Not only was fermentation impossible, but the weeds and fungi that make THC, psilocybin, cocaine, opium, and even caffeine didn't exist. It was as if the entire planet were Utah. On the surface, this seemed like a desirable environment for the advancement of society. Families that would have otherwise been torn apart by addiction remained perfectly, tediously intact. Violent acts and promiscuity were a fraction of what they are on this earth. Society never even bothered to invent the word hooligans. Coming from such stable backgrounds and growing up in towns free of substance-induced conflict, children quickly learn to observe the nuances of the world, cultivate patience, and appreciate the beauty of nature, the subtle rewards of a simple life. They wouldn't have drugs to help in this respect once they got older, nor would they have any literature or art inspired by drugs. Turns out almost all worthwhile art is influenced, directly or indirectly, by intoxicants. Take Shakespeare. On sober earth, he was never born. His would-be parents were butt ugly, even by Elizabethan standards. Without thick beer goggles to assist in this respect, they couldn't work up the appetite to conceive little William. Not that it would have mattered what was there to write about, considering how woefully devoid the world was of any juicy conflict. In that reality, the Capulets and Montagues would have teamed up to buy a timeshare. Stranger still, without the bad judgments and debaucheries fostered by substances, there was no need for Jesus to quit carpentry. He kept his mouth shut and took the contract work. Humans still sin, but nothing worth dying over, for Christ's sakes. The world lacked fizz, and it only got flatter with the discovery of Terra nectar, the first known mind-altering substance. Terra trees produced berries swollen with nectar so rancid that anyone who dared taste it instantly developed a condition known as suicidal tongue syndrome, of which I will spare you the grisly details. One summer, a westward pioneer in search of gold got himself lost in a section of uncharted wilderness devoid of nutrients, except for the Terra berries. For fear of starving to death, he had no choice but to choke them back. Thankfully, for his survival and his tongue, he lacked a gag reflex and was able to push the berries deep into his throat past his taste buds. After ingesting the Terra nectar, the pioneer's mind cleared, his attention sharpened, his willpower grew unbendable, and his reflexes rivaled a mountain cat. The Terra nectar had the exact opposite effect of tossing back a shot of tequila. It made the imbiber uber sober. As the berries blasted away his brain fog, the lost man found it surprisingly easy to navigate his way out of the woods. He took with him a handful of Terra tree seeds that he later cultivated. He learned to dry the nectar into powder and package it in pills. Sheathed in gelatin, the vile substance could be swallowed safely, but God help you if you chewed. The pills were a smash. If society couldn't get intoxicated, the next best thing was to get extra unintoxicated. The government soon realized how much healthier and productive communities could be under the influence of the Terra nectar. Politicians commissioned the smartest scientists to synthesize the juice for mass production. Over time, it became mandatory to get high on this anti-high chemical. Operating heavy machinery while not under the influence was a misdemeanor. Getting caught behind the wheel while sober would get you hit with the DWNI. Sober drivers were just too susceptible to distraction. Considering the human propensity for error, the idea of getting behind a 1,000-pound death machine while steeped in the unfocused, sloppy fog of baseline sobriety was simply absurd. This became common sense. As it did here with fluoride, the government began to put Terra nectar in all drinking water, though even that disallowed for too much sobriety. Next, the government deployed terraforming drones that crisscrossed the skies, spraying a Terra mist, ensuring that no citizen could ever again fall into a sober stupor. People were so focused, so effortlessly in flow of their lives, so detail-oriented and unswayed by distraction that societies everywhere built impossibly elaborate cities and intricately complex transportation systems, but nothing too aesthetic. Art and entertainment were obsolete. Undistractable people did not need distractions. Violent crime fell to zero, impulsive one-night stands and unsafe sex were a thing of the past, procrastination was left behind, and emergency rooms never saw the unfortunate injuries acquired in our world by those drunken heroes who utter the forsaken phrase, "Here, hold my beer." In fact, For decades upon decades, nothing exciting ever happened. The world hummed along, progressing ever forward, synchronized in lockstep like the march of a clockwork army. History had not seen such efficiency, such perfect order. Then, one morning, a man named Edward Finicky awoke in a cold sweat. Without knowing why, he got inside a self-driving car and told it to just go. Go as far from the city as possible. The car drove for many long hours before Edward felt a sudden urge to exit, like the universe had sent him a signal. He asked the vehicle to stop on the side of a random country road. He got out and meandered into the woods. By chance, he came upon a freshwater spring free of the Terra chemical. Over the next few hours, the Terra's influence wore off, and Edward felt the unfamiliar, giddy buzz of sobriety. He began to spin in place until he fell over in a fit of dizziness. He laid on the ground and blew on his thumb to force lightheadedness. He giggled happily. Then he stood up, pointed his sharply groomed scalp at a nearby oak tree, and charged. The collision filled his vision with stars. He felt the intoxicating rush of losing his mental hold on reality, and then something very rare happened. Edward Finicky III was struck with creative inspiration. He rode home and applied for a permit to open a sobriety pub. He bottled the water from the fresh spring and sold it to customers in a venue that provided comfortable, safe spaces, hermetically sealed from the Terra mist, where groups of strangers could party down as they sobered up. Patrons came in droves. None of them knew why they came exactly, since their lives under the Terra influence were so completely free of problems. It didn't make any sense to soil their pristine existences with the irresponsible sobriety, but it called to them all the same. The pub drew hundreds of customers per day. Many of the younger clientele had never felt sober in their lives. In comparison to the focused, clear-minded effects of the Terra mist, sobriety made them feel downright drunk. The word drunk, like hooligans and karaoke, was another word not yet invented in this reality. The revelers burst into spontaneous dance. They crooned, they cried, they made poor decisions. They indulged in public displays of affection, gross ones. Bar fights broke out, and crowds watched the carnage like it were the most mesmerizing display of fireworks they'd ever seen. Fearing the adverse effects of too much sobriety, the city council passed a law banning bars from serving more than 2 drinks of Terra-free water to any single customer per night. So Edward opened 3 more small pubs throughout town. This way, customers could have up to 8 Terra-free drinks before going home, ensuring they sustained maximum sobriety all evening long. You feel that? Edward asked his patrons one fateful night. You feel that right there in the chest? That's your heart racing, the thrill of being vulnerable to human error, the risk of making a terrible mistake. Is a feeling you didn't know you missed, but I bet you did. I bet you missed it dearly. It's the feeling of being alive. The customers hollered. Come with me, Edward continued, and let's have another dose of fresh water at the next bar. He teetered over to the exit and out of the door, and 11 customers followed. As the night wore on, sobriety loosened their souls. They whooped and sang and danced and argued and howled at the moon and just made all sorts of general ruckus. And while no one paid attention to the rowdy hooligans who invented the first pub crawl on this earth, in Edward's world, no one could look away. They stood on their front stoops, amazed and thrilled. They would not forget what they were witnessing. They had no idea how long they'd been waiting for some sloppy savior to introduce a little disorderly conduct into their lives. Edward raised his cup to them. Cheers, he slurred, and stumbled onward into history. Thank you.
We're going for Ben Sandell. Where can people see more of your work, Ben Sandell?
They can't. They should be glad that they saw me here.
That's right. You got a moment in time, so let's make some noise for all of our performers tonight. That's our show. That's our Saturday. We just got 1 day of the con left. We got 2 shows here tomorrow. You're welcome to check either of them out or float through the con and build your own experience. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight.